Code Section 54953, subsection E. Sewer Authority Midcoastside will be holding this board meeting by Zoom webinar. Access to this meeting is available to the board and the public by either computer web link or telephone audio. So I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Director Nye?
Here.
Director Lohman?
Here.
Director Clark?
Present.
Director Penrose?
Here.
Director Slater Carter?
I was here, present.
Chair Ruddock?
Here.
Very good.
Okay, we're moving on to March employee anniversaries. The first we have is George Long, our lead operator, who's been here 34 years.
Yep.
He must have started work here when he was about 6. Maybe digging ditches.
Okay, so we'll have Tim Costello talk a little bit about George Long. Tim?
Me?
Yes,
Yeah.
you.
Sorry, I'm wandering around the house at the moment. I'm trying to multitask. George, where is he? There he is. I see him now. There's a lot of people here today. So George and I don't know how many people know this. Actually, I knew George before he even started at the treatment plant when he was at the lumberyard. In fact, when I worked at the store down in San Gregorio, George worked at the kiosk at the state beach down there. So I actually knew him way back then. That was like in the when was that, George? Like 86, 87? Do you even remember that far back? That was a long time ago. So anyhow, so we actually hired, the two of us hired 6 weeks apart from each other. The reality is that I've probably spent more time with George over the past 32 years or whatever that we've worked together than we've probably spent with our own families, with all the overtime and everything and the extended hours and whatever we've had to do at the plant. Just a crazy amount of days and a lot of stuff we've seen and a lot of stuff we're glad that we didn't see. The plant, back then when we started was totally different plant than it is now. But George is one of those guys that we can take and just, if things are falling apart, just throw him in the middle of it and he'll figure it out. That's who George is. He's the guy that comes in and figures things out and makes it work. And
Yay.
Yeah, it's been good working with George for the past 32, is that what it is, George?
34.
34, oh my God. I lost a little time there, that'll happen. So anyhow, congratulations, sir, on your 34 years of sticking it out there that long. Yeah, how many more you got in you?
5 more. 5 more, because Kishan's going to be there for 5 more years. I'm staying with my man, so. Going to stay with my man.
All righty then.
We're getting a lot done, so I appreciate that. Thank you for everybody, and thank you for all your work in the board and stuff like that. I know it's thankless sometimes, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Congratulations. And thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have George Evans.
Yes, I better find cookies tomorrow.
A couple of the hands raised look like, oh, perhaps not.
How about George Evans, Finance Officer, 5 years?
That's me. I'm talking about Georgie tonight. So I don't know if you guys all know this, but George started at SAM as a temp in October of 2016. And then he was hired as a SAM employee in March of 2017 as the accounting technician. And wouldn't you know it, by April of 2020, he was promoted to the position of finance officer. Now, George's accounting skills are nothing short of impeccable. And thanks to Georgie, our audits from fiscal year 1718 to 2021 were reconciled and brought up to the standards of our auditing firm. So, Georgie, when it comes to you and numbers, you don't miss a beat, and you were always on it. So now here comes the good part. Okay, Georgie, despite that you are Canadian and you are never cold and you don't know what poutine is, also your fear of file cabinets and your weird obsession with binders, your odd request to have the defibrillator warmed up and ready for you when you come back from your morning walk, your dislike of avocados and mushrooms, he says it's a texture thing. Your crazy obsession with books from England, sometimes your bizarre working hours, your quick wit, but sometimes very dry and sarcastic wit. I said that wrong. It should be your quick, but sometimes very dry and sarcastic wit. And the daily bantering between you and Tim. Well, I could go on, but I'm not going to. I just want to let you know you are one of the best people that Sam has ever had in my 15 years of working there. Your attitude, your many skills, the way you listen to me when I need to talk, and the way you talk me down from the ledge sometimes. You are the guy that don't know much about anything. In my opinion, you know it all, and I couldn't ask for a better person to co-work with. Thank you for the last 5 years of your commitment to Sam and to us, your coworkers. We appreciate you, we love you, and you truly do make Sam a better place. That's it.
Praise.
He's the best.
Susie. Thanks a lot.
Gotta have a good numbers.
Did you get
man.
some tissues?
I see Barbara hand up. Barbara?
I just want to again express my appreciation to George as well, as one who's been on the finance committee for quite a few years now and has gone in and asked a lot of questions. Great. He really wants to get things right. I really truly believe that we're very lucky to have someone there who is so committed to making sure that all the finances make sense. And I appreciate George, and I think he does a wonderful job for Sam and us. Thank you.
Congratulations and thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We have a good team. George and George. It's in the Georges.
Yes, tonight's the George night.
Yeah.
It's a double
And they're
George
both-
Monday.
Yeah, they're both George and Josephs too.
Wow.
Oh, it must have been fate that brought them together here.
Or
TJ squared.
maybe when they were born, and it was the most popular name, maybe George. That might have been decades ago, though.
It's Latin for farmer.
Well, farmers are good. We love farmers. Okay. Well, thank you both. Now we're moving on to public comment. So this is the time to ask questions or make comments on items that are not on the regular agenda. And let's see, do we have any hands raised?
Matthew.
I see, well, Matthew and Catherine.
Matthew, go first.
Yeah, this is, I think, of interest to the public, and it's not on the agenda, so I thought I'd ask this question. What was the cause of the recent power outage at the plant? Was it PG&E or a problem at the plant?
It was a problem with the PG&E. I believe there was some problem with the lines. So part of the crew came in yesterday evening. They tried to fix it. They couldn't fix it. So then they fixed it early this morning. So we had to have staff all around the clock throughout the night. They took turns and they were on vigil at the plant.
Yeah, it's been amazingly windy, so I'm sure PG&E's had a lot of trouble. Highway 1 is still closed right now because of power lines across the highway by Coronado and El Granada, which is making a lot of happy commuters, I'll bet. So, yeah, thank you.
Catherine?
Yeah, I have to admit I didn't read the manager's report real closely, but I wanted to say this when we had more people watching, because they typically tune in for the consent agenda. And then they leave, of course. But Sam and its a marvelous crew got yet again a CSMRA. Keishan, if you would translate that.
California Sanitation Risk Management Agency.
Thank you. Awards. So we have a huge banner and we got a plaque put on the wall. And so anybody coming into the office can see it. And that's really cool because you don't get that award if you have slip and falls and accidents, serious or silly. Our crew takes very, very good care of Sam and is very very strict about adhering to safety standards and protocols. And so it's good for Sam, and needless to say, it's good for every single person who works there. And as recognition of that, CSMRA had a fund that they divided between each employee of each of 3 agencies. And so our crew each got a Visa card worth $285 for each crew person as a thank you from CSMRA. I think that's it's amazing. Well, it's not amazing. Our crew is very strict about standards. They're very good about they worry about not only public health but everybody else's health. And so I just think that everyone who works for Sam and frankly everyone who visits deserves a round of applause for no accidents and getting this award. It's not an easy one to get. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's wonderful news, and it shows what an excellent crew we've got.
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. I don't see any other hands raised. So let's move to adoption of the consent agenda, item 3. We have item 3A, approved minutes of March 28th. Item B, approved disbursements for April 11th. Item C, ratification of the resolution for continuation of virtual teleconference meetings for Assembly Bill AB 361.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Raddock.
Yes.
Good. And we'll move on to the next item.
So item 4 is regular business. We'll start with item 4A, report on wastewater sampling and COVID. And I understand that we have a presentation by the consultant.
Correct. Before we get on to the presentation by BioBot Analytics, just wanted to give you a little introduction. BioBot Analytics reached out to us late last year and wanted to do the sampling on no cost basis. We tried it a couple of times, and then this year, beginning of this year, we got into a contract with them to actually do the testing for us on a payment basis. So we just started it. We are trying to build a certain amount of database, but nevertheless, we have Noor Sharara from BioBot Analytics. They are primarily from the East Coast. I guess they're based in Massachusetts. They were very kind to come and give us a presentation, although it's past 10 o'clock for them. But, on my insistence, they said they would make a presentation. So I'm going to share the screen and then Noor is going to walk through the slides. Okay, Noor?
Yes, thank you, Kishan, and thank you for inviting me tonight to share with you a bit about who we are and what we do at Wastewater. at BioBot Analytics with wastewater. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm a public health scientist at BioBot. I joined the company in September 2020, so a few months into the pandemic. Prior to BioBot, I was working on post-Ebola epidemic preparedness and response, and I met the BioBot team when they were in incubation at MIT while I was getting my public health training at Harvard. And then a few years later, I happily joined the team. Next slide, please. So BioBot is a spinoff of MIT, where both of our co-founders met. Our CEO and co-founder, Mariana Matus, was pursuing her PhD in computational biology at MIT, and our co-founder and president, Nusha Gailey, was doing research on smart cities technologies. And BioBot is started as a collaboration across departments at MIT. And the two of them launched BioBot in 2017. So what is wastewater epidemiology? Wastewater epidemiology is the science that seeks to leverage wastewater to identify the public health impact of certain pathogens and substances of interest in a population. And the way we look at it is that when you go to a doctor and you give a urine sample, for instance, it'll do the readout of your health. We look at wastewater data as the readout of a community or a population health. So it's just different scale, but same information that we can gather from it. What can we look, what type of information can we detect in wastewater? Well, we can certainly detect and measure SARS-CoV-2, so the virus that gives COVID-19 and its variants. We also have at BioBot done R&D on influenza, so the virus that gives the common flu, and we successfully detected it last flu season in wastewater. Wastewater analysis can also detect and measure the presence of licit and illicit substances like fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine. When BioBot was created in 2017, the first public health problem it sought to tackle was the opioid crisis, which was the biggest public health crisis in the US at the time. And the first product that we were looking at was measuring opioid exposure and consumption in wastewater. And then when the pandemic happened, the company pivoted very quickly to SARS-CoV-2. As soon as we could tell that the virus was shed in the stool of patients, we knew that that means that when people flush the toilet, it makes its way to the sewer, and it would be a great way to measure how much disease activity was happening. And that's very much exactly what happened. And since the start of the pandemic over 2 years ago, wastewater data has tracked very closely clinical case data. And so, like many viruses, SARS-CoV-2 is shed in the stool of patients. Infected people shed the virus in their stool very early on when they start getting infected and before they exhibit any symptoms. And so we received those samples in our lab. As Kishan said, we are headquartered in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but we receive samples from across all states in the US. We have this FedEx overnight delivery, and so we're able to receive samples very quickly, but also return results very quickly. So since we started working on the COVID-19 pandemic, as I said, we've worked across all 50 states. We have sampled over 20,000 samples, representing over 30% of the US populations. We mostly receive samples from wastewater treatment plants, but we also receive samples from manholes. So some cities want to do get more granular data. So it's also manhole level. And in some settings, we receive samples taken at the building level. So if you think about senior living facilities or assisted living facilities, or universities, or places of work, or large corporate campuses, they're also doing wastewater monitoring on their premises to detect COVID-19 and prevent any outbreak from growing. And I forgot to mention on the slide before, but I think that Kishan mentioned it in his introduction. Last summer, we worked with the HHS, so the Department of Health and Human Services, and the CDC for all summer, about 12 weeks. And we were receiving samples from all 50 states, over 320 communities. And that was really when the CDC was trying to do their national wastewater surveillance system. And so we were their sort of sole contractor on that engagement. So how does it work? You order, then we ship the kits, you collect the wastewater samples in the kits, then they get sent back to our lab in Massachusetts. We do in our lab, the lab and the data analysis, and then we issue a PDF report that you get via email. One question that we always get, and that I think we used to get a lot more before than we get now, because the value of wastewater in helping control the pandemic has been a lot more clearer recently. But one question we always used to get was, okay, what do I do with this data? How can it help my community? And so there's different ways in which this data set can help, a given community. The first one is there SARS-CoV-2 in my community? As we've seen, we're now in phase 6 of the pandemic. It goes up, it goes down. Sometimes clinical testing is very readily available, sometimes it's not. Nowadays, for instance, we know that testing sites are closing. So through wastewater monitoring, we're able to detect early if COVID is in the community or is potentially making a comeback if we think that we have hit a lull, for instance. It can also help with trend estimation. Is disease activity rising, falling, or is it steady? During the Omicron surge, this came in very, very handily, because as soon as we saw that wastewater was increasing after Thanksgiving, one of the questions was, well, when is it going to peak? And when it started to peak in wastewater, this was very useful information, for instance, for hospital systems who said, okay, it looks like the worst is behind us. The Omicron surge has peaked. We can start rescheduling surgeries. And so this trend estimation as to whether it's going up, continuing to go up, down, or plateauing has been used by cities for mask, for vaccination, for public health messaging, but also by hospital systems to plan for operations and staffing resources, et cetera. And lastly, it also helps to understand prevalence estimates. So how big is disease activity, right? We're still trying to understand how much is too much in terms of wastewater. So we don't have this equation that would say if you have X number of viral copies found in wastewater, that means that many people are infected. There is variability in human shedding. For instance, if I'm infected, I will shed a certain amount in my stool of the virus, but the next person may shed something completely different. And so that exact sort of approximation of number is not there yet. However, we can look at the magnitude of the curves. And BioBot on our website, we have data visualization where you can look across time at the county level how wastewater concentrations, which really reflect disease activity in a community. So how much of this virus is really spreading right now? And that's very helpful because we know that there's asymptomatic cases. We know that there's pre-symptomatic cases. We know that some people don't go get tested. We know that people get tested at home, and those numbers never make it to official sort of statistics. And we, as I said earlier, we also know that now public testing sites are shutting down. And so that means that if someone is not insured, well, they may not be able to get a test. And so given the known limits to healthcare access, then that becomes an issue. And that's when the value of wastewater data becomes even more important than it was, because these other data sets, such as case data, become so much less reliable than before. That's just one example of the sort of Omicron wave, looking at the lead time that wastewater had over cases. And so as I was saying, we saw that the peak in wastewater happened, a few days and really weeks here before cases. So the dark yellow is the wastewater data, and the light yellow line are our case data. So this is from our website. As I said, we offer visualization at the county level. And so that's in the Boston region, where they've been sampling and working with us really since the beginning of the pandemic. So we have 2 years, as you can see here, really great historical data. And it's been really increasingly a tool that people have looked at. You can see, for instance, last January, so just over a year ago, when there was the increase, the vaccine had been authorized, but vaccination hadn't really started. And so there was an increase when there was the first variant that was more transmissible. Then you can see in August of 2021, when there was the Delta variant, you can see the elevation in wastewater. And then lastly, of course, the post-Thanksgiving Omicron surge that you see as soon as it started going up, it got picked up by the media. And then once we hit the peak in January, people sort of started to become a bit more optimistic. And so that's just an example of how this data has been used as a community risk assessment tool to inform so many decisions. We had people being like, we canceled our Christmas party because of the wastewater data around Omicron when it took over the Boston region in around Christmas. And so that's just a list of sort of a few ways that our customers and people we work with have used wastewater data in their COVID-19 response. As I just showed, so the Massachusetts Wastewater Resource Authority, we've also been working with them for a very long time, since the start of the pandemic, and they, on their website, they share the BioBot sort of report. And so there's the north end and the south end. So, and many of our sort of customers on the county or the city or the Department of Public Health, it really depends on which levels of government and which team will make that data available publicly, again, for the population and the community at large to be able to look at it and understand how big is the problem right now, or is it, are we in a low right now? Very much trying to hone in on this community risk assessment tool. Next, please. And here we're just showing the latest 2 reports from your wastewater and treatment plan. So this is from a sample that was collected on March 29th. And the report was provided 2 days later. So the dark blue is the wastewater, and the light green are the cases that are reported in your county. Very much sort of pretty low in comparison to sort of earlier data points, which also makes sense. Right now in the US, nationally on average, cases are low and they are plateauing. In some regions, I'm right now in New York, for instance, cases have gone up about 60%, but 60% from a low number remains still a low number, but there is an increase. We're not sort of discounting that, but overall the numbers remain low. That slight increase has also been seen in Washington, in Colorado. And so right now it's sort of, it really depends on where one is. There are sort of localized increases, but we're not seeing a surge that is triggered by BA2, so this subvariant of Omicron that is more transmissible, like we saw with the Omicron surge earlier this year. And so in the report, we can also see, for instance, where does your sample fit versus all the other samples that, that BioBot receives. And so these are just elements to be able to allow you to sort of contextualize your data versus the rest. The first graph on the page before was really your sample versus your county case data. Sorry, if you can go back to the previous slide, because I didn't show the hexagon map. But on the hexagon map, what we showed is all the various concentration levels across the US, and you're able to sort of see where you're at, where is your shade of blue versus the other states. So this is just sort of some elements for us to add context to the number that you get, because really what you get is this effective virus concentration. So that number that is at the top here, it reads 67,564. But then we put this number in context with the other wastewater samples that we receive from around the country. And I think we have another report, the latest one from last week. So this is a sample that was collected on April 5th. And the report was issued 2 days after. So here we see an uptick, right? The effective virus concentration on the other one was 67,000. Here we're at 259,000. And we can see by just looking at the graph that there was a flat line, and now there's that one data point that goes up. Of course, we cannot interpret one data point like this. The takeaway from this is let's look at the next result to understand why was there an increase? Is it a sustained increase or is it not a sustained increase? And this is another way that we really look at wastewater data to understand data points. We never look at one, we look at 2, 3 in a row to try and say, okay, is there a trend? Is there something? Is it pointing towards something? Or was it just an outlier? Maybe there was a super spreader event that day that was collected, and that's why we see this uptake. So the next results will be interesting to look at and then compare versus the prior ones. And yeah, I'd love to answer any question that you may have on the reports, on the methodology, the technology, and just everything that we've learned working 2 years with wastewater treatment plants across the country.
Greg, would you like to start?
Well, I just commented, I was looking at the San Mateo County dashboard today, and yes, guess what? There has been a recent uptick. So what they're seeing is exactly parallel to what we're experiencing.
And is that the county right next door?
Or that's our county?
That's us.
That's you, okay. Well, I was gonna say then that makes sense, right? All epidemics are local. So if you're seeing an uptick and it would make sense that it's because there is increased disease activity in that locality. And it's very similar to what we see in the Northeast as well. Even not at the county level, we see that when Massachusetts increases, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York are so linked. As soon as one increases, we know what's coming ahead. Because people travel, because it's close, because there's proximity, and they very much behave similarly.
Thank you, Matthew.
I noted that on your hexagonal map of the states, there are several that were completely white. Is that due to lack of data, or we know that, I mean, there's COVID in every state, so.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
This is based on the hexagon map is BioBot wastewater sample. So if we haven't received wastewater samples from that state that week, then it's going to be, there's not going to be any color. So no, of course, there's COVID everywhere, but this is really based on our database, data from our database.
Thank you.
Director Penrose.
Yes, I don't mean this to sound flippant. It is not. But I'm wondering why we are bothering. What good is this going to do our plant, and what good will it do our customers to have this information?
Yeah, so I think the value of wastewater data is even more important now than before. This is becoming, we're not getting the full picture. Case data is not saying the full picture, right? For many reasons that I've mentioned. The first one, testing sites are closing. People are not going to get tested. People are using rapid antigen tests at home. That's staying, that's not appearing in any official statistics. How will we detect increased disease activity at the community level otherwise? And sort of to as a follow-up, once you have seen this, what do you do? We saw, for instance, today that Philadelphia has reinstated its mask mandate. Now, I'm not saying that you should use wastewater to go and reinstate mask mandate, but I think it's a very good way of having the pulse on the viral spread in a county to understand what's happening. Is this going up? And by how much? Is it continuing to increase? And what actions can be sort of taken in response to that?
Anybody else have a question?
So are we, by doing this, providing valuable information to the county authorities about what's going on? I mean, is this sort of part of doing our part as good citizens to be funding this? Or is this something that is just of sort of passing interest that's not going to get used by the county authorities? Just curious to know that.
Yeah, so I'll defer to Kishen on that one. I don't know who he shares the reports to, but definitely something we encourage our wastewater treatment plants partners all the time to share that data with whoever can take actions based on that data, right? And so certainly we have people who, I get on calls with the Board of Health of a given county or community all the time. And it's often the wastewater treatment plant that connects me with the Board of Health, because the Board of Health didn't even know that the wastewater treatment plant was doing that. And the Board of Health all of a sudden is super interested. And I get on a call and they say, okay, can you add me to the list of emails that receive these reports? And I said, of course. So I think it's not something that's sort of just in passing. We're 2 years in, and as I said, for instance, MWRA, we have wastewater treatment plants that have been doing this for 2 years. And many of them, to your point, have established sort of good working relationships and collaborations with the Board of Health or the sort of city government or county government. And there's exchange of information and use and sort of like real use of that information towards public health messaging. At some point it was for vaccination, or even lifting mask mandates. At some point, the wastewater results were so low that there was a city in Massachusetts that said, well, it's so low, we're going to lift the mask mandate. And I said, yeah. It doesn't only tell you when something is going bad and is going up. It also shows you that your interventions may be really working to sort of really keep viral spread to a minimum. And how will you know this? And wastewater analysis is such a quick way to get that answer.
Kishen, do you have a follow-up remark?
Yes, I just wanted to let you all know that county had actually approached us to carry out a similar sort of testing in collaboration with Stanford, but that was getting delayed for various reasons. The documentation was not completed, and we don't know when we're going to start. Probably very soon we're going to start. But in the meanwhile, since BioBot came forward, we thought we should at least go ahead and get started and show the county this is what we can do, and we can probably tie it up with them and see what sort of funding they could help us with this, or work with a different lab. We just thought we'll try out a few samples, and that's where we got started.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for, other wastewater plants to test in the county. We're a tourist community. Who knows if it's, unless we did like manhole testing, did a deeper dive, maybe it's coming from tourist super spreader events, on nice weekends. It might be, coming from the harbor, who knows? But I think some more granular testing would be useful. And I think certainly the county should be doing this testing and, using it as a data point and, formulating policy. And maybe, collaborating with neighboring counties, Santa Clara and San Francisco. So, there's some issues that are, I think, unique to the coastside that we might want to explore further. Catherine?
Thank you. I think it's an interesting comment that Stanford wasn't quite as capable as MIT in this regard, but we'll leave that as it may. I'm sure Caltech was just up there, but they were busy on other things. But I have seen a lot of studies that have been in and of themselves paid for and done. And as a friend of mine who does EIR said, they just kind of collect dust. I think this is a great beginning of looking at how to use other sources of information to help back up decisions. And I know they've been doing drug tests on in certain neighborhood sewers for a long time. But that said, I think that this is an exciting start. Because the more densely we get populated, the more easily disease is spread. And the bigger the problems, social problems then become. So I think this was a fascinating presentation, and I hope you will stay in touch with Kishan and us and keep us informed on what new stuff is coming out in terms of just so many of the different aspects of this. There's just too many to go into right now, and you guys are just getting started. And I think it's exciting, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I just want to stress your point, around infectious disease spread and density of population. I think you're, spot on. And another thing is the speed at which these viruses spread, right? I think that we've seen it for 2 years, and the issue, it's not really an issue, but the shortcoming with case data or hospitalization is that they're always behind, right? It's a retrospective review. It's what happened last week. Whereas the real sort of magic of wastewater data is that because we can collect it so quickly, analyze it so quickly, we really reduce that time frame between the disease activity and the moment at which it's sort of shared. And so instead of being behind the virus, we're able to sort of keep up, and really we do genomic sequencing also on the samples, and we're able to detect types of variants. And this is our way of being ahead of the virus, because as some of you may know, in fact, in California, I think the Omicron variant was detected in sewage in wastewater samples before it was reported from a clinical sample analysis, because of the time it took to the patient sequence the sample, report it, et cetera. They had already found it in wastewater much faster. And that's really sort of that added advantage that wastewater data offers that we want to leverage to offer an information that is non-traditional, right? That doesn't make us rely on the healthcare system to inform public health and sort of clinical medicine planning.
Are you all planning a public offering anytime soon?
We'll keep you posted. I shared in the chat, I don't know if you can all see it in the Zoom chat, a link to our data if you want to sort of look across different counties of the US and look at the variant data as well. So this is, you can browse through the.
Thank you.
Very informational, very educational, very exciting. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Keishan, thank you for putting this on the agenda.
Problem. Thank you very much, Noor, for being present and for giving us the lovely presentation.
Of course, and I'm available if anyone has any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noor.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, we're moving on to item 4B, authorize general manager to issue a purchase order to Rockwell Solutions for the purchase of submersible chopper pump for Montera Pump Station in the amount of $112,484.
This is one of the projects in the existing capital improvement plan for 21-22. And I'm not sure how many of you would have actually gone to Montera Pump Station and visited the pump station. But I thought I could show you some picture of how the chopper pump looks like before I get into more details. So if I may share my screen and just show you some pictures. Sorry. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So this is a submersible pump, which is at Montera Pump Station. And at Montera Pump Station, we have 3 pumps. One is a chopper pump and 2 are submersible pumps. So the present item on the agenda is to replace one of the submersible pumps with a chopper pump. And the one on the extreme left, you see the one which is painted green at the bottom, that's a chopper pump. And this is the pump which was installed, the chopper pump was installed in 2015 when we did the Valimar force main. And this pump got introduced for the first time at Montera Pump Station because we were having a lot of problems of the pumps getting clogged and a lot of downtime of these pumps, a lot of manpower time was wasted in removing all the clogs from the pumps. So we came up with this chopper pump, and this pump has been working very well, has reduced downtime, has reduced the maintenance of these pumps by a large extent. And therefore, we thought it prudent to even replace the second pump, which is to the extreme right, which is a submersible pump with a chopper pump. And that is the item which is brought now. And the earlier submersible pump was actually procured in 1983. And we thought it's best to have a chopper pump as not only a redundant pump to the existing chopper pump, but would also replace the existing submersible pumps. So the way the chopping takes place is because of the vanes, which have a cutting edge. The cutter bar actually cuts the all the rags and other things which come into it, the plastics or any miscellaneous material, and they cut it to literally small pieces. And the smaller solids are then easily pumped by the centrifugal action of the impeller. So staff is here to answer any questions.
I don't like the word chopper. It reminds me of my granddad's false teeth. Anybody have a comment or a question? Catherine?
Will this work on those plastic wipes, those flushable wipes that we have been dealing with all these years? Will that help alleviate that problem? I mean, they still get cut in chunks and strips and probably combine with fat and make a giant blob. But does it help to keep that stuff moving?
Yes, I believe so, since they're cut into small pieces.
We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes. Moving on to item 4C, authorize general manager to issue purchase order to Rockwell Solutions for the purpose of chopper pump for sludge mixer pumps in the amount of $71,776.
The concept is similar to the pumps that we discussed in the last item, but this is for pumps at the plant, which is called sludge mixing pumps. And as you all know, we have digesters at the treatment plant, and the digesters pretty much require the sludge to mix. It's similar to our body. You need something to stir up and mix completely in the body so that it gets digested properly. So these are the sludge mixing pumps. Presently, we are using just centrifugal pumps, and we would like to convert it to the chopper pumps. And these help keep the grit in suspension. And the way it works is you have two mixing pumps, and each one of them are dedicated to one particular digester. We have two digesters, and therefore we need two pumps. I can show you the picture of it. I've got one slide. Yeah, so these are the sludge mixing pumps. You see the motor here, and you see the pump here, and these are pretty been there for quite some time. A workhorse, they've been doing very well. The motor is excellent, although we use it on a continuous basis, but still it's always better to change over to chopper pumps and have redundancy in case, we need a backup or something. So therefore, this item is put up for authorization, and this is a part of the capital improvement plan, which was adopted last year. So it is in the infrastructure budget, which is adopted, and we would be purchasing and installing it hopefully this year, because the delivery time for these is not going to be that much. It's probably going to be 6 to 10 weeks, and we should be able to get it within this financial year. Staff is here to answer any questions.
Questions or motions?
I have a question. MWSD will now have two chopper pumps, and we've seen that there are at least two at the wastewater treatment plant. Are there other chopper pumps in the collection system, and where are they?
No, there are no other chopper pumps. The only chopper pump was at Montera pump station as of now, and we don't have anything else anywhere.
So might it be a good idea to have others at various pump locations?
We could look at it, but going by experience in the past, we've not had issues with these pumps clogging either at Princeton or Portola. And that's why we didn't think of chopper pumps at both these stations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll move that we approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Dye? Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Slater Carter? Director Slater Carter, you're muted.
So sorry. Of course, yes.
Chair Ruddock?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to item 4D, approve second amendment to employment agreement with general manager. And I just have a little statement I'd like to read aloud just to clarify the purpose of this item. In accordance with Government Code Section 54953, subsection C3, I am providing an oral summary of the recommended action. The item before the board tonight is to approve a second amendment to the employment agreement, which sets forth the salary and terms and conditions of employment for the general manager position, retroactive to January 1, 2022. The recommended action is to grant a 6% wage increase to the general manager's base salary, retroactive to January 1, 2022, and a one-time $2,000 lump sum payment effective upon the board's approval of this amendment. The total annual salary increase is $13,937.38. In addition, payroll taxes will increase by $449.02. The annual base compensation for the general manager position will be $246,227.10, effective January 1, 2022, plus retirement, taxes, and fringe benefits, which are a function of payroll. Additional details regarding this item are set forth in the agenda and the resolution associated with this item. Are there any questions from the board or members of the public regarding this item? I'll start with members of the board. Questions? Seeing none, Catherine?
I just want to say that I have no questions. I'm on the personnel committee, and this was discussed. It was a pleasure working with this board. We were all very honest and outspoken, and we realized that Keishan is still relatively new as a general manager, and we encourage him to continue to learn as quickly as he has been in the past. He's done a phenomenal job, and the whole board is very supportive of what you're doing, Keishan, and very thankful. So it's a pleasure to recognize you in doing this.
Are there questions from other members or members of the public? I'm seeing none. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
With pleasure.
Director Slater Carter,
I echo Dr. Penrose with great pleasure.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone who participated in this thorough process. Item 5, a general manager's report.
Nothing specific. I'll be giving a detailed report at the second meeting of the month, like always.
Right. Do we have an attorney's report at item 6?
No, Madam Chair, nothing specific to report tonight.
Okay.
We will need just a very brief closed session, but I know that's in that.
Any director's reports? Seeing none, we are going to, any topics for future board consideration? Seeing none, we will convene in closed session. Thank you, everyone. We'll convene an open session after the matters discussed in closed session. So everybody else can go bye-bye.
Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.